Very good. So happy Friday to everybody, and good afternoon to our Singapore participants, especially Corrado and our team, and then good morning to the Nordic audience. Welcome to our knowledge sharing session with the KPMG Singapore. And we are very, very lucky to have Corrado Forcellati with us today, who is the Director of Sustainability Services at KPMG Singapore team. And the reason why we are very happy and delighted to have Corrado with us today, because their team has been involved for the Singapore Green Plan 2030 development. So we have a very rare opportunity to be able to pick his brains and hear also kind of like what are the potential end goals and what kind of opportunities this Singapore Green Plan 2030 might provide them for the Nordic companies. We're also going to cover a little bit the Singapore Zero Waste Master Plan, and hopefully we have time then also talk about potential different kind of deployment grants. And then after Corrado, we have catered also some time for the Q&A. So, and Corrado, we have been asked companies to prepare all the tough questions, so hopefully you are ready. But without any further ado, I'm going to hand over then Corrado to you, and you can start by sharing your screen. And thanks again for being here today with us.
My pleasure, Sami. Good morning to everyone, and good afternoon to the Singapore team. So the Nordic, for the one knowing me, you also know that I'm familiar with the Nordic countries. I used to be in charge of Nordea. First in China and then in Singapore until October 2019, when I then decided to pursue a different career, stepping out from the CEO role and into the consultancy by deep diving into sustainability and digitalization, as I was basically seeing those two things converging into a big trend, and I was probably pretty time-wise, I was pretty spot on, because as I've been progressing in the sustainability field with KPMG, Singapore as a country and Singapore as a political agenda has definitely had sustainability and digitalization very much in focus actually up to the development of the Green Plan 2030 that we were going to discuss a bit about. Before starting, can I just get a sense from you whether there is any particular aspect that you might be more keen to understand? Because otherwise, what Sami and I discussed is to give you a little bit. There are so many parts to this green plan, so I will spend some time going trying to give you a sense of how to put all the dots together. And the reason why we believe that that could be actually quite useful is also for you when you are pitching, and even more when you are going to apply for grants or getting wanting to have support from some of the agencies, that you get an understanding who are the go-to persons. So if you're okay with that approach, I will follow a little bit the presentation I have, but I'm also happy to take guidance from you. If there is something in particular that you want me to cover, then I will try to take that into account. So can I just get a sense from everyone?
So Corrado, this is Riku.
Hi, Riku.
Good to see you. It's been a while.
Yes, it has.
I'm happy that you are happy in your chosen path of sustainability and digitalization. And actually, good timing for you because Nordea closed the shop.
Yeah. I had probably some insight about what we're going to happen.
So hey, one thing to consider when you are describing these grants and other approaches here is that most of our companies who are now in the portfolio, they don't have a local presence. So if you could kind of highlight a little bit the Singapore's approach to foreign companies who don't have a local presence and foreign companies who have a local presence, and how to kind of manage in this jungle without having a long history here and being known for these players. So that would be my wish.
Thank you, Rico. Yeah, I have a raised hand from Reclima. Ivar.
Good morning or good afternoon. I'm Ivar Hagman from Reclima, and some of our solution has being developed and are functional, and some of parts of the solution are under development. If you could describe a little bit how to work with these concepts which are under development against some partners here. I've heard that they would like it to have it all fixed, but some words about that would be nice from our side.
Okay, thanks, Ivar. Any other wishes?
Hello, it's Ole Rød from Norsk Biogas. Can you say a little bit about who's the drivers behind the green shift in the region? Is it the governmental or municipal, or is it basically the business environment?
Ole, thank you. That is actually leading perfectly into into the presentation. Let me share my screen. Can you see it? Sami?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah. So, Ole, actually, I'm starting with it. So let me see. Can you see the master plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the master plan, and this is very much our view of, if you want, is my view, because I was when I was preparing the presentation for today, I was thinking a little bit how to contextualize some of the things that you have been hearing. I understand you already had meetings with some of the statutory board in Singapore. So Ole, here is what we think are the driver for the behind the master plan of Singapore turning green, as you can see from the graph. If we start from the innovation, I think we back in 2016, 17, when Singapore decided to push for the digitalization and had a very big effort and spending in preparing for what is today a very thriving digital community, was really to incubate and to start building entrepreneurship. I newly met the Ministry of Trade and Industry in a closed-door session with the Eurocham. And what was very interesting to hear from the Ministry of Industry and Trade in Singapore is that they have a big belief and a big need for deep tech. So everything that they start looking at from a master plan, including the green finance or the solutioning part that will help Singapore decarbonize, has a tech element that Singapore is driving massively right now. And I think we start seeing the incubation not only pertaining to digital lab, as we saw in 2016, 17, 18, but now you have the incubation of agri-tech. You probably have followed that there is a new fund that has been established. Is actually a 60 million Sing dollar fund to promote the establishment of tech labs pertaining to agri. And it's very interesting because two things happen from a sustainability angle. The first one is on sustainable food. So the innovation and in terms of incubation and entrepreneurship, the sustainable food will be coming, if you're asking me, from the lab to start with, and then be scaled. The second thing that is happening on the tech side for agri is basically the new technologies to increase the yield by preserving soil and basically soil primarily. Singapore, in the innovation part of things, is positioning itself strongly on the green map. And again, watch out for the agri, especially on the food side, because the grant that are available in terms of establishing and incubating and building entrepreneurship in Singapore is actually quite appealing. So Ivar, to your question, maybe something to look into. Now, I'm not very familiar with the Raklima's business, but I'm happy to take a discussion with you to see whether there are any potential angle for you to explore in terms of innovation. But it's definitely a big driver.
Thank you.
Yeah, the second driver is about finance. Singapore realized, as many other finance centers, that the green capital or green investors are coming with capital that is definitely appealing to many. Most of that capital, don't forget, is likely being pension funds, is sovereign wealth funds, so is long-term money that are being invested in a country. Is money of high value. There is fierce competition to get access to those green investors. You have China, Shanghai, of course, is trying to position itself in the space of being green. You saw China coming out with a commitment to be zero carbon by 2060. Definitely there is a narrative behind the decarbonization to attract funding and capital. So don't underestimate the power of having a strong narrative to get access to capital. You have Hong Kong, that is very much a green capital center today, but is losing traction mainly due to political reasons. And the upcoming Green Finance Center of Asia, excluding China, is actually Singapore. So what you start seeing from a finance perspective is a number of regulations, is a number of incentives, is a number of new players. You have probably today, Singapore is the fastest growing market for fund manager in Asia, because Singapore has decided to simplify the access to the market and the licensing of fund managers. So finance is a big driver. So reaching out to new investors and new capital is definitely something that you need in order to finance the transition into a green economy. Carbon markets is a very interesting space. I think everyone that works with decarbonization today is looking into carbon not being a problem, but being a solution, meaning that you need to start looking at the possibility of building marketplaces where carbon can be traded, where you have credits and offsetting being properly valued. You have a lot of technology going into that space right now, not only in terms of solutioning for carbon capture or carbon reduction, but you also have blockchain, crypto technology going into the tokenization of carbon credits. So it's a very interesting space, so much so that Singapore, as you will see later in my presentation, Singapore is taking a very clear stand and saying we want to build a carbon service hub for Asia, for Southeast Asia. The other big driver, Ole, is clean energy. I think Singapore being a maritime center and now committed to be on a green pathway, the sandboxes that are being created in Singapore, and the latest announcement was actually from the day before yesterday from the Maritime Port Authority of Singapore. That will be, they will establish a decarbonization center of excellence in Singapore. So really a sandbox where they will be trying out new type of fuel. No doubt in my mind that where Singapore is trying to position itself is in the space of hydrogen. Yeah. So if you're working with technologies pertaining to a new type of fuel, whether it is based on biomass, wind, hydrogen, ammonia, Singapore is definitely a place to consider because there is a big push towards clean energy. And you will see some of the roadmaps are even looking into the refineries and the chemical plants that Singapore has, and all the investment that are made, how to make them sustainable. Another driver in my mind that is sparking the whole green plan is the circular economy. I know that I understand you had a meeting with NEA and PUB. What they're doing is very much driven by circular economy principles of reusing as much as you can. I think on the water side, they have really achieved excellent result in terms of being able to reuse water many times before it actually been given back to nature. For food, they are looking at it increasingly as an ecosystem, and where a lot of interest is right now is pertaining to waste, and in particular plastic is being scoped. I can share a little bit more once we are going into the detailed roadmaps. Trade, big driver for Singapore. I think they realized that the whole green wave of, or the whole greening of supply chains starts by having green logistic hubs. They are building new logistic centers that are green because they are green building, and they're using green material or greener materials, but is also the whole way they're looking into how the transportation will be settled from Singapore, reaching out to other parts of Asia. Very interesting development, if you're asking me, on the green logistics. So you have the likes of Amazon increasingly investing into Singapore, and I think the reason why they're doing it is as well, they are feeling that they get comfort, but they also increasingly get access to those purchasing power agreement that are green. So Singapore is really trying to green the sources of electricity that they are able to provide. You will hear me later saying solar. There are a big push on solar, but they're also looking to import renewable electricity. So there is a plan of building an underwater cable from Australia to Singapore for Singapore to import renewable electricity from Australia. Another big driver behind this is actually the digital solutioning that we start seeing. I think I mentioned blockchain for carbon. What we see increasingly is something called green fintechs. Singapore is taking the lead in building solutions, or at least incubating or supporting startups that comes with green finance or green solutions pertaining to that are actually part of the master plan. And finally, I know, and this is mainly my capacity from the Eurocham, where I'm the chairperson of the sustainability committee. There are a number of conversations between AU, Singapore. Singapore has the same conversation with many other countries on doing green cross-border agreements, mainly pertaining to data. So you will see that going forward, because it's a big issue today in the market globally, that the data behind sustainability is scattered and not accurate. I think the governments from different countries start taking a stand that they need to be able to share those data a little bit in the same way as we are doing it for money laundering and sanctions, which leads to my view that this going forward will likely be regulated in the same way as you have financial crime, you will have crimes against nature. Yeah. So increasingly you will see those cross-border agreement, including enhancement mechanism to leverage. So all those are some of the drivers. I don't know if it fits with what you see, believe, if there is anything else that you think I'm missing here.
Oh, I think to cover the most. What we see in Scandinavia and in Europe, I guess, is that the legislations drives the change. When I was younger, to put it that way, the things moved very in a way slowly. The growing or the younger people are much more concerned about the environment, so things start to move even faster. But I believe that it's absolutely necessary that you have a very firm strategy and direction that are backed up with legislations to really to make sure that you succeed.
Yeah, I agree fully. So this is the master plan, and this was then translated into the famous SG Green Plan 2030. Now this is really coming from the SG Green Plan directly. So I will try to give you a sense of why is this plan important and how is it actually built, because it helps you, especially when you need to consider establishing yourself in Singapore. It will help you if you are already established. To Riku's point, is how do you actually approach the possibility of grants by understanding what are actually the objectives. So to break down the green plan for you, few things to remember. So the green plan is really a national movement that builds around 6 blocks, and you can see them. They are the ones having the green square around them. The one that is very interesting, and I will pick few that I believe could be quite defining for Singapore and thereby as well for how you can make an impact on the plan. Green government. One of the things that we are working with, and I'm actually personally working with the Ministry of Sustainability and the Environment. They are looking at reviewing the green public procurement, and is a big thing because you already have a procurement policy in Singapore, and now you are trying to enrich that public procurement by adding green criteria that need to be fulfilled by vendors that are relevant to Singapore. Is a very interesting aspect that could put Nordic companies, if you're asking me, into a favorable position to import technology and to scale, because you are fulfilling some of those requirements much easier than some of the other competitors that might come from the region. It's something we have heard a lot in the past, that when tenders are coming and when the government is out looking for vendors, the specs of the procurement policy are so broadly defined or not really categorized in terms of the impact on environmental, that most of the time the one winning is the one with the lowest price. I think I saw it before in China. I have seen it in Southeast Asia. Singapore is not very much different. So I think the fact that you will have a green procurement plan policy will definitely create an edge for companies that are ahead in terms of complying with ESG requirement, broadly speaking. I think the other thing that could be very interesting for you, knowing a little bit the different type of businesses you are in, is under sustainable living. Is the bottom part of sustainable living. There is a big push and is a push towards creating awareness in terms of green consumerism. What we are working with also at KPMG in terms of green consumerism is basically how do we ensure that you can scale and provide higher consumption for product with a green label. So as you have in the Nordic with the Nordic Swan label, Singapore has a green label scheme in place already. They have around 3,500 products under that scheme. The question is, how do you create awareness? Because consumers in Singapore are not really aware of any green labels as we speak. But you will see soon there will be a marketing campaign that will be launched probably sometimes during the second half of this year. There will be increasingly interest pertaining to eco labels and eco certifications that will be required or at least demanded from some consumer. And then the big thing pertaining to green consumerism is the idea of reducing waste. So you have this ambitious target of reducing household water consumption by to 130 liters, but you also have this amount of waste that today goes to landfill needs to be reduced by 30% by 2030. And it's really ambitious because the mindset for a Singaporean is not really to think much about how to dispose. So I think Sami and the one living in Singapore, and I think I can put myself in that bucket. You do a little bit of you try to recycle at the best you can, but most of the time you find yourself actually throwing everything in the same bin.
Exactly. There's no options. It's really difficult actually to do. Yeah. You need to make an enormous effort to go anywhere beyond the first step.
So we are doing an interesting study that will be published probably sometime. I think it will be done by June, July. Is on packaging waste. There is a lot of, you probably heard from NEA when you had the meeting as part of the Zero Waste Master Plan. Of course, they're looking into different options in how to not only decrease the amount of waste going to landfill and incinerator, but basically also looking into how to recycle that waste. How to increase the rate of recyclability by looking into building a backend that can start recycling material and thereby creating a secondary market in Singapore that is of interest. Heli, you raise your hand.
Yes, just thinking about those eco labels, and I'm coming from the company Valmet, and we have industrial application, advanced measurement and automation application, and just think about that. Is this eco labeling something that is coming also to the industrial offering, not only for the municipal or that kind of offering?
Yeah, I think Heli, what is happening on the one of the things that may happen in order to improve the quality of waste that can be recycled is to look at certification, so eco certification of the collecting processes. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that might impact the industry is eventually that you will have labels requirement for your packaging.
Okay.
Is being discussed. Also here, I can share that I have had some meetings with NEA, close door meetings together with Eurocham. They are a bit interested to explore whether they can implement a fee system similar to the one that is in Europe, in preparation for the possibility of charging a fee for waste. So you will have probably the same as you had with carbon tax. You might have a waste tax in Singapore.
Okay.
eventually.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Under the energy reset, I think what is important to take note also for this group, looking at your profiles, under the green infrastructure and buildings, you have this 80-80-80 plan that is rolled out by 2030. So very ambitious plan. So the first 80 is that 80% of Singapore's building will be green by 2030. 80% of all new buildings will be those super low energy buildings. So there is a new regulation, a new directive that was launched in connection with the Green Plan that will apply. So 80% of all new buildings in Singapore will actually be of super low energy. 80% of 80% of existing best-in-class buildings will have improvement of 80% compared to the 2005 level by 2030. So here you can start thinking 2030 is actually 9 years, is 8.5 years from now. How do you achieve 80-80-80 by 2030? So that will be a massive deployment of resources, and there are an ocean of grants and subsidies and funds you can tap into if you have the right technology that will help executing on the 80-80-80. And I'm saying it because it's important for you in your pitches, but also when you are thinking about your solution. Do you plug in? Where do you plug in? Are you able to plug in into one of those 80s? If you can, then I definitely see a good chance. The other thing that could be very interesting for some of you is actually on this plan for sustainable towns and district. There is an ambition plan. You know that Singapore has a lot of social housing. Those are regulated under the HDB. HDB, I think, I don't have the number of people, but is a large amount of the population of Singapore that is actually living in HDB. You have 50% reduction of energy consumption by 2030. So what they're doing is basically they're looking for all type of available roof space that they can actually have for solar panels. And that brings me to the first one. They are planning to install at least 1.5 gigawatt of solar capacity by 2030. At least 1.5 gigawatt. So I have two participants with raised hand. I can't see the name, so please. Yeah.
Yeah, Eirik from N2 Applied.
Hi, Eric.
Hi. On the sustainable towns and districts, and you're talking about the rooftops, will that also involve rooftop farming?
Yeah.
Because they are looking at 30 by 30% food production.
Correct.
By 2030.
They are. So they're looking at the roof farming. They're looking at vertical farming. Where Singapore is actually state of the art. There are no other country in the world that has made so much progress on vertical farming as Singapore. Solar technology is also being shaped now to be, those solar panels are much more flexible. I actually newly visited one of the leading companies in Singapore. It's amazing how today those solar panels can actually be fitted everywhere. You can wear solar panels if you wanted to. So it's quite fascinating. Yeah, but yes, Eric, they are looking for a roof space. What is also happening, and this is a little bit probably my own perspective, with the pandemic. And this ambition plan of 30-30, so 30% of all nutrient for Singapore will have to be produced locally by 2030. The pandemic has made many office spaces available because people are working from home. There are discussions, and I think the Ministry of Sustainability and the Environment, Grace Fu, she mentioned that we need to start taking some of the floor space that is unutilized to do farming.
Right. Thanks.
So you will see indoor farming increasingly in the financial district area of Singapore. Yeah. So we will have smart tomatoes and clever aubergines. Yeah.
Excellent.
Anyone else?
I believe Heli had a hand
Yeah.
raised. So.
Heli, was it from before or is it a new question?
Sorry, this was an old hand. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Green economy is a big pillar. I think what is happening here is the carbon service hub that I mentioned before is a big project. If and when Singapore will be successful with it, it will create a very different dynamic in the market, because you will have Singapore being the marketplace of a new asset type. And that asset type will basically be carbon. I know it's already an asset today, but the way you will probably look at the carbon service hub, it will be much more comprehensive. It's much more holistic. And it will be in order for Singapore to be successful in being a carbon service hub, they need to have those cross-border data agreement in place. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Singapore has not a big carbon footprint that will justify a marketplace on its own. The only way Singapore can justify being a carbon service hub is that other countries, the neighboring countries, they see Singapore as the marketplace for their carbon activities. Yeah. On the resilient future, so the sixth movement to take note is basically two things. I think the food security is something we discussed about, so we can take it separately. What is interesting on the climate change perspective is there are two activities that will also be looking into 2030. The one is basically you have a coastal protection plan for Jurong Island and some of the east coast, northwest coast of Singapore. And then you basically have, and I know this is relevant for some of you, you have a $5 billion Sing dollar dedicated to coastal and drainage flood protection. If you saw the Singapore newspaper from yesterday in the front page, and Sami, if you haven't, then probably can send the first page of the Straits Times from yesterday. There is a big story around climate change and the flood, increasing flood risk in Singapore. So the 5 billion Sing dollar fund that will be dedicated for this is also looking for technology that can help Singapore protect not only the coast but also the inland.
Okay, thanks. We will get the a digital copy of that and
yeah,
distribute it.
Yeah, I think it could be it's a very interesting story, and again, it's front page, so it's everywhere. Yeah, so this is just breaking down a little bit the green plan. So remember, I think what I really want you to take away from this, remember those movements, and I'm calling it movement because it's really creating a collaboration between private, public, and civil society. There are clear targets, there are clear goals. I think those are important for you to take note, because as you pitch or as you look for proof of concept, EVAR, on technology that you want to try out, I think you need to be able to plug into some of those conversations to be successful. That will be my best advice to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if we are moving to the next, I know this is, sorry, this is like on the back of the envelope, but I was doing it yesterday because I think, so you got the master plan a little bit. What are the drivers? We took a little bit a deep dive into the green plan and trying to understand more about the 6 movement and what are the objectives and targets. But I think what is really important to you is to understand who are the key players here. So who's actually going to execute? And I think this is really helpful because it will give you a sense of how to approach your own, if you have a business model, if you are in Singapore or you are considering being in Singapore or you are abroad, this is probably giving you a sense of who might be the relevant one that you want to talk to. So let me start giving a little bit a sense of how this has come along. So you have the green plan. So green plan, now everyone has been involved in the green plan. There are 5 ministries that are in charge of executing the green plan. So you have the MTI, is the Ministry of Trade and Industry. You have MOT, is the Ministry of Transportation. You have MND, is the Ministry of National Development. You have MSE, is the Ministry of Sustainability and the Environment. MSF is the Ministry of Social and, I think it's Social and Family, it's called. So it's basically everything that deals with healthcare. Those 5 ministries are supported by their statutory boards. And those are the ones that you can see in the smaller box with AMA, EDB. I will go through it a little bit more in detail. I think we still have good time, so I can afford that. So if we start with green finance, you remember there is under the whatever you do as one of the drivers. You remember capital. I mentioned it being how do we actually capture new investors? How do we build a green finance hub? For that, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, to the left upper corner, they are the regulator, but it's also the Central Bank of Singapore. What you see happening now with the MAS, and we will go through their roadmap more in detail, is basically they are preparing, to Ole's point, they are preparing the regulatory framework, the rules of engagement, the incentives to facilitate the access to green finance in Singapore. So today you will have a number of grants and subsidies being made available to small, medium-sized enterprises, even individuals, to access green finance based on frameworks that are fulfilling ESG requirement, for which you can subsidize and get grant, for example, for the work that we are doing as consultant. To the left, you have all the banks, but you also have all the listed companies, and then you have SGX. SGX is the Singapore Stock Exchange. They will play a big role in terms of carbon service hub. So what is happening already now is that SGX has been tasked to develop a carbon exchange. That plan is being executed on as we speak. If we move, and then on the green finance, there are other 2 players that you need to take note of. I think the names are familiar to many of you, but if you are not familiar, then you have Temasek, is the sovereign wealth fund of Singapore. together with the GIC. The difference among the two, Temasek is investing, is basically taking equity and investing in portfolio companies. That's where you see this blue bar crossing all the green plan, where of GIC is more taking equity and investing the savings of Singapore. And as you probably remember from the budget 2021 discussion, for the first time, Singapore has a deficit in their budget. So they have been spending more than what they are saving, and that is due to all the pandemic recovery schemes that they have had in place. So green finance basically remember three players: the Monetary Authority of Singapore, Temasek, and GIC, and then SGX as the one building the marketplace for them. Under climate change, clean energy, transportation, you remember there are a number of targets pertaining to clean energy. You have the solar, you have the EVs on the EVs charging stations, you have new fuel types. You have basically three and a half ministries that are set to execute that plan. The Ministry of Trade and Industry, they will basically use the Energy Management Agency, the Economic Development Board, and the Singapore Tourist Board to execute. So if you have, now to Riku's point, if you are considering establishing yourself in Singapore because you have a technology that you feel fits into one of the objectives that we described under the Green Plan, EDB is the one that you want to talk to. EDB is the one that will be granting you the license to operate. EDB is the one that will actually even facilitate a possible POC, to Ivar's point. MAA and SDB are a more statutory board for you operating in Singapore, but they will be primarily giving grants and subsidies in connection with either technology that can help advancing the carbon technology side, that will be under the EMA, or if it's the Singapore Tourist Board, is mainly pertaining to the green consumerism, if you remember, because they will be increasingly looking at two things: how to encourage tourism to be back in Singapore, and secondly, they will also be obliged to increasingly deploy green product for hotels and establishments, not to mention live up to the zero waste master plan, right? Because most of the waste is actually generated from shopping malls and hospitality, and that is under the SDB jurisdiction. If you're looking at transportation, then you have the likes of Land Transport Authority. You have the Changi Airport Group. They also here, Singapore is organized very smart, if you're asking me, because there are clear rules of whose land, whose air, and whose water. Water is under MPA, the Maritime Port Authority. On buildings is the BCA. So here we have the Building Construction Authority of Singapore. If you're looking at food and water, it will be primarily the Ministry of Sustainability and the Environment being the relevant one to talk to, under which you will have the National Energy Agency, NEA, with whom you had a meeting. It will be the Singapore Food Authority. It will be the National Water Agency, POB, and it will actually be the urban. I think it's called urban. I wrote it down. I never remember that.
Redevelopment Authority.
Thank you, Redevelopment Authority. Right. So I think this should give you a little bit of sense in how to connect the dots from the plan and who will be delivering it. Right? So you see, the intention here is really to give you a little bit a map so that you can connect it. And I think by connecting it, it will facilitate your conversation with some of the, not only the corporates you are meeting, and they might be at the level of Temasek and GIC, whether in terms of their portfolio companies, but even it could be from their private equity side, or it could be one of the trust or one of the foundations. But it can also come from the NTUC enterprise, which is mainly the consumer side of Singapore, since they are running most of the supermarkets, but it's also the insurance part with the income. So this is kind of giving you, I hope, I know it's a little bit, I mean, I apologize for this style. It can be improved, but I hope you get, yeah, please.
Can I add one thing for our companies? First of all, I think always the napkin versions are the best, because that forces you to really concentrate. This is brilliant. And for our members, so we met yesterday, IPI and Enterprise Singapore, and they're kind of on the same level with EDP. And maybe the biggest difference is that, like, usually EDP is dealing with the little bit larger corporations. So let's say if you are Dyson or any of MNCs and you want to establish your presence in Singapore in any forms, like for example Neste from Finland, or maybe it could be Valmet, but opening your innovation lab, for example, here, EDP is then usually the go-to. And Enterprise Singapore, there are some overlaps, but Enterprise Singapore is more, I would say, kind of like small medium size companies, and hence kind of like in these startups and scale up and growth company, Blayfield, they are usually the best go-to partner to start with. But again, they if they see that there's a case that like you should actually talk with EDP, the connections are there, because they are very well aware of who's doing what, which is quite unusual if you look at the many other countries in the world, like how their government agencies are working. At Singapore, they are quite clear and well structured. So yeah, it's not right.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I forgot actually ESG, because I'm working so much with ESG that I forgot them.
Too close.
Yeah. Riku.
Yeah, I'd like to add some more excitement about the grants. Just a recent example. Yesterday, I was in Kone, elevator manufacturer from Finland, their regional launch event for their new products, and their new elevators are connected to other products. And one of the products in Singapore, which is already connected, are cleaning robots by Singapore-Chinese joint venture. 200 of those robots are already in use in hospitals and hotels in Singapore. And the buying price right now for one cleaning robot, kind of small size that works inside of hospital or hotel, is now 7,000 Singapore dollars. It's so cheap because it's only 20% of the cost, because 80% of the cost comes from government grant. So anybody who buys cleaning robots right now for certain type of premises gets 80% of the cost covered by government. So usually these grants that encourage risk avoiding locals to buy new technologies, it's around 80% the grant size. So that really helps. And then one challenge is that usually it's impossible for a company not registered here to sell products that would get these grants. So that's why you need a local joint venture partner or a partner. Sometimes you need to have a local seller who has at least 30% of local ownership. That's the minimum level of the local partner.
And Enrico, if I may, I will also address your initial question. Today, if you are not localized and thereby not necessarily having access to grants, but you feel that the technology that you have developed or are developing fits into one of those objectives and targets, establishing a company in Singapore is very easy, straightforward. This gives you a very strong narrative around your business model. the establishment of a company in Singapore, and I know, Riku, you know much more than I, but it can actually be done very fast without a big capital binding. Yeah, so I think that's why when I was discussing the today's session with Sami, we really want to give you a little bit a more granular view on the plan, because it can help you building a narrative in case you should consider establishing yourself in Singapore, because then you know what is hot and you know what will be the way they will be looking at applications. Yeah. Do we have any more raised hands? No. Just going through some roadmaps. I think you had a meeting with PUB. This is really coming from the web page, so there is no surprises to you. I feel what could be interesting is to remember, PUB is under the Ministry of Sustainability and the Environment. We know that they will have something to do with water. We know, going back to the plan, that water, it comes into different places, come into the greener infrastructure and building, because we are talking about efficiencies. It's primarily energy, but it's also about the water consumption. It's definitely around the green citizenry, where we have a reduced water consumption plan per capita per day of 130 liters. And is coming from the protection, the flood protection. So when I was looking at their plan, then you start thinking about what is that is impactful under the green plan that fits into the roadmap of PUB. Drainage is definitely something that they're super keen in looking at. They need to have increasing drainage power and smart, in predicting, but also being able to absorb what is going to be increasing rainfall in Singapore, and thereby increasing risk for flood. The same goes for the smart sewer grid. They are collecting water. You can imagine if you have I think Singapore already today has a very high capacity in terms of absorbing rainwater. But you can imagine if now that rain is increasing disproportionately, it will actually put this whole ecosystem of PUB under pressure. So they are continuously looking for technology, especially under the smart. So we are in the Internet of Things. I think you have a lot of technology on the ground, but they're looking for technology that is actually helping Singapore to plan and predict much more, much better, so that they can actually work with the facilities that they have in a better way. The next one is actually from the Ministry of Sustainability and the Environment. This is the one that I'm working with quite a lot. I think the headlines are clear to everyone. The big questions is on they are the questions pertaining to the Zero Waste Master Plan. The Zero Waste Master Plan, I have one slide, we can go through it later. But just to give you a sense, the Zero Waste Master Plan is mainly looking at e-waste initially, and then it's looking at packaging waste by introducing reporting requirements. So now, if you are an establishment of a certain size, you will have to report your waste, and everyone you will be speaking to in the market will tell you that this is the start. Because once you start reporting on your waste, then of course NEA being appointed to do this task, they will start considering whether to incentivize or penalize companies depending on how much waste they are producing, and thereby the impact that they have on the infrastructure of Singapore. The big ambition is, of course, to reduce the waste going to the landfill, and in particular plastic being incinerated. So I can share with you, if I don't know if NEA has shared any plans. If they haven't, then I would like to give you a little bit a snapshot on what may happen. Plastic is the biggest material being imported in Singapore in the form of packaging. So most packaging waste in Singapore is actually plastic. Now they are introducing a deposit, refund deposit scheme, a little bit as we know from Europe. So for plastic bottles and cans, you can actually give it back, and they are organizing a system so that you will be collecting PET bottles and metal cans, aluminum cans for recycling purposes. So this is happening, but the other thing is everything else that is not DRS, so it's not part of the refund scheme. Today, if we're talking about household waste, probably 80% of all waste goes directly to landfill and an incinerator, if not even more than that. Singapore realizes that plastic has a value. So what they are considering, and I can say keep it a little bit for yourself, because I know there are some discussion with Shell, Neste, Total, so all the big refineries are involved to look into the possibility of investing into a chemical recycling plant for plastic. And that will be a game changer, because today all the plastic that Singapore is recycling is actually being exported. It goes to Malaysia or it goes to Europe. By building a recycling facility in Singapore, you will start attracting waste from other countries. Indonesia primarily is the goal. And if you have the big refineries, you remember in the plan, I can go back, sorry. There is this plan about developing Jurong Island. So under green economy, yeah, the last second bullet point, develop Jurong Island to be a sustainable energy and chemical park. You can think about it, and then you say, how do you do that? One way is actually that you start using your refinery capabilities and capacity that are already installed. You are using it to recycle. So you create a secondary market of reused plastic. Yeah, so if you are into that business, if you have technology that can help Singapore recycling, I'm sure you will have a fast track in applying for grants and more, because it will fit this roadmap. The next one is also from.
Sorry,
yeah,
Corrado,
sorry.
I think we have one question from
of course.
Heli.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
Heli.
Yes, thank you for this. So this is concerning the plastic. So in EU there is now a lot of discussion ongoing concerning the microplastic and nanoplastics. And what is actually the situation in Singapore and Southeast Asia concerning that topic?
Yeah, it's being debated. So Singapore is not really an issue yet, because it's not a big amount of waste that is generated from microplastic. But the neighboring country, Indonesia, is a huge problem. And of course, it's impacting Singapore because most of the waste from Indonesia is coming to Singapore via sea. So the plan that I mentioned with having a recycling facility there are discussion that plant might be actually in a neighboring island between Singapore and Indonesia. So to actually deal with microplastics as well. Because if it's chemical recycling plant, Heli, you can basically recycle all type of plastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in Indonesia, you have a big problem in collecting that waste today altogether. It is just being disposed. You don't have any structure around how it's being collected. And that is what Singapore is probably trying to arrange, is the certification of those processes going forward.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
so that is some of the work that I'm doing right now with the ministry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this.
Yeah. This is from NEA, so you probably have been hearing them as well. I think the reason why I wanted to show you this one is actually the bottom right box, capturing values overseas. I think what is really interesting, if you take the plastic example, if Singapore, you can imagine Singapore being, you buy a product, you consume it, you dispose it. This is how Singapore has been functioning. Now, if you start putting in between using and disposing, you put a process that will recycle it, then you actually move Singapore up in the value chain, because you are capturing some value that you can actually export. So if Neste, Shell, Total, they will start refining fuel that is based on recycled plastic, that will be exported. Yeah, so I think I just wanted to bring that to your attention, because I really feel this is something that when we're looking at Singapore, we're looking at as the small island, probably not having a critical mass, and definitely has no critical mass in terms of driving some things. But if you are adding all the drivers I mentioned at the beginning and you start putting it in a roadmap, I think I start getting a feeling that some of those things may happen. The last one is actually the finance part. And I think this is also important for you, because whatever is happening, it will have an element of funding that is required. But it's also increasingly this journey of transparency. So there are 4 pillars that the Monetary Authority of Singapore has launched in connection with the Green Finance Action Plan. The first one is really because they recognize the systemic risk of climate change, then they have a big interest now to make sure that the financial sector in Singapore is actually resilient. So they are increasingly asking for financial institutions, being banks, insurer, asset managers, and REITs. REITs is a big market in Singapore, to make sure that they understand what are the risks that they have on their books in terms of climate change. But they are also looking into developing solutions. This is where you have the carbon as one of the things, but they are also looking into increasingly green finance product. In connection with the Green Plan 2030, there was a big announcement that Singapore Inc., so those statutory boards, I remember those are the ones that will execute the green plan, right? Now they will be issuing 19 billion Sing dollars of green bonds. The amount is big, but even more impactful is the fact that Singapore Inc., if this is actually part of Singapore Inc., Singapore Incorporation has never before raised debt. This is the first time that Singapore is raising debt, and the debt they are raising is green. NEA is the first one that will launch a bond. You will see that bond being launched in the market very soon. Yeah, and thereby they will have to justify, based on the MIS plan, they will need to justify how are those funds being deployed. Right. Then there is a lot pertaining to technology that is happening in the finance space. There are a lot of green startups that we see coming to the market. And finally, there is a lot of capacity building that is happening. And this is really important because it's really part of creating new jobs in Singapore, not only in the finance sector, but actually across the sectors. But the green finance is, of course, one of the easiest sector to start with because it's highly regulated already. Any questions before just moving into? I will just give you a sense of the zero waste master plan, and then we can take questions. Nope. Zero waste. So there are 3 targets on the zero waste master plan that are worth remembering here. The first one is that you have this fantastic landfill that is, I really think, is state of the art, and the way they are being able to use the ashes from the landfill. They're calling it new sand. So new sand is a technology that is taking the ash from the landfill and from the incinerator and transforming it to construction material. But the amount of waste that is generated in Singapore is actually putting the Semakau landfill under pressure. So there is a clear target in the zero waste master plan that the lifetime of that landfill has to be extended beyond 2035. I think Singapore recognizes that they have no space that they can give away to accommodate more waste. It simply it can't be found, and if it can be found, it's too costly because you will have to reclaim. So the plan is definitely to reduce waste at source, and that is therefore that you will have the strong targets that it will be put on households. Where household will be asked to reduce their per capita per day by 30% by 2030. How to do it remains really challenging. I think labels could work. I feel that there is a need for a completely mindset change. I think Riku, Per Christer, Sami, you probably I hope you agree with me, but this is very difficult. If this is left alone to the household to decide, it will never happen. And now I'm half Danish, half Italian. If this target was given to an Italian, I would say, okay, 2030 is probably an understatement. The Danes probably would find a discipline to do it. Singapore is somewhat in between. The other one that is very interesting is this 70% overall recycling rate, where you have 30% domestic recycling rate. That rate today is around 5%, just to give you a sense. So in 9 years' time from now, how do you increase the recycling rate from household waste from presently 5 to 30%? That's what the plan is about. So this is where NEA, in charge of the zero waste master plan, is actually now designing the rules and the incentives, right? And this is where you will start seeing a number of regulations pertaining to food waste, e-waste, packaging waste that will come on stream. The one that will impact some of you having products is basically the extended producer responsibility, as we know it from AU, is very similar in Singapore, but basically you start being asked to ensure that your product has a much longer lifetime than before. I think what is also interesting from a research and an infrastructure is really what I mentioned on the new sand. This is the green box below. You can see this waste to energy program and this closing the waste loop, where you have what might look like or might even be green cement in the future. So there are a project and research being conducted today how to use this new sand. And new sand, again, is ashes from the incinerator. A very interesting project is this TUAS Nexus, because basically you are combining now water, waste, energy, and all together is something that Singapore will take a lot of pride about. And I understand the reason for doing it, because it's the first ever waste, water, food nexus that we have seen. So if you haven't studied it, I'm happy to provide you some material on the TUAS Nexus. I think it's a fantastic project that is actually coming to life. And is likely being the project that will get the proceeds from the green bond that NEA will be issued soon. So just to give you a sense, if you are looking for a green bond investment, yeah, look for NEA. It could be an interesting one. I think I will stop here and take questions. You will get the presentation, so also feel free to reach out.
Super. Thank you so much, Corrado. This was absolutely fantastic. And yes, we have your presentation, so we will share that with the companies then later on. But yeah, let's open the floor now for questions from companies. So let's go by raising hands. Per Christa was the first one, so.
Yeah, thank you very much. This was a fantastic and very comprehensive overview of everything in this space. And you put it so nicely together. It all ties together. So obviously, Singapore. Well, it's clear that Singapore have a kind of coordinated plan with all the ministries, all the agency, all the statutory boards working together. Apparently, the actual communication between the different ministries are. Maybe you can question that a few times, but all in all, it seems like Singapore is very good putting up master plans, identifying problem statements, pulling all the relevant stakeholders together, bringing funding behind it, connecting the university and research institutions to go for goals. And this is, I think, has been the success story of Singapore. It's run like an incorporation more than a democratic country as such. But I have one question for you, and that is their willingness and ability to adapt foreigners and foreign companies, and their openness to procure technology, building solutions together with foreign companies, and using foreign capacity. Could you say something about that? What's your experience on that?
My experience is actually you have a very accessible establishment from the government. I think my experience, whether you are foreigner or domestic, you get access to decision makers. I can advise the companies to work together with associations, chambers, in order to increase the impact that you can make on an agency or on a ministry. So since I took the role at the European Chamber of Commerce as a chairman of the Sustainability Committee, the access we have got to ministries and to the ministries themselves. So they are very keen to actually understand from European companies how to execute. So Per Christa, I think because you have, knowing Singapore, you have put ambitious targets that are all going back to 2030. Again, I will keep saying it is actually it's 9.5 years away.
Yes.
Those targets are super ambitious, some of them. How do you execute? I mean, that you have money is one thing. So yes, I think access to funding, grants, subsidies is there. That will even we haven't touched upon it much, but the fiscal policy in Singapore is also changing or being reviewed as we speak. So they are looking into green taxes. So they are also looking into the possibility of taxing you based on your impact. So I don't feel that this is really an issue. I think what is really important, again, team up, collaborate, find associations, chambers, entities that can help you getting access to, and really start understanding those targets and objectives, because the more you can translate them into your business plans, the more you will be plugged into what will be the Singapore language of sustainability.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And we're talking about Singapore leaning and looking to other countries, other areas when it comes to setting up different schemes. We do have, I think I mentioned a few times already, we do have the upcoming scheme of the beverage container refund scheme from NEA, where Tomra is actually now coming in as a potential vendor of the technology, but is also actively working with NEA as a consultant of how to set up that scheme.
Correct.
So the government is open for those kind of consultant services. I think an early entry into various market segment is on the advisory side as well, showing to examples, show to best cases around the world. I think Singapore is very, very absorbent of good practices and learning also from others' mistakes, obviously. It's everything is science-based and quite rational decisions here as compared to the neighboring countries.
Yeah, I agree with that too, Chris. Janne, you had your hand raised before Eric.
Yes, I'm here with my colleague Anssi.
Hi, Anssi.
Anssi has something to ask.
Yeah, thanks for a very interesting presentation. You mentioned the green taxes. We have been thinking about the concept of virgin material tax. So since we're into plastic recycling, especially chemical recycling, the basic concept would be that should you have a product made out of recycled plastic, it would have 0 tax. And if it's made out of virgin material, it would have like 200% tax. And when you were talking about how to motivate people to change their recycling habits very fast, that would obviously be an interesting way if you went to a store and a recycled Coca-Cola bottle would be $1 and a virgin material Coca-Cola bottle would be $3. That would be a very fast way of motivating people to look into recycling, because the cost of recycled raw material would go up like a rocket. So on the green tax discussions, has anything like this been discussed? And if you can open a bit more on what it would be in practice, the Singaporean green tax.
Yeah, I'm not part of any tax discussion, but what is being discussed, I can share that with you, is on plastic. I think NEA in particular is very keen to understand what AU is doing pertaining to virgin versus recycled plastic. Because recycled plastic is much more expensive today than virgin plastic based on the present oil prices. So to your point, if you want to drive recycled plastic more, firstly, you need to have a back-end facility, which is not there yet for Singapore. So you need to build that. And again, there are plans to build it. Once you have the facility being built for chemical recycling, then you will definitely have incentive schemes because you need to have raw materials from waste plastic that goes into your facility. So the discussion that I'm plugged into are mainly pertaining to once you have that back-end infrastructure, whatever is going to be, I don't know. But again, I can only guess based on the refineries that you have in Singapore, based on Neste, Shell, Total. I can only assume that chemical recycling is probably where Singapore is going into. If that's the case, then I agree with you. You will probably see a tax on virgin plastic and incentive for recycled plastic.
Right. So it's kind of quite pragmatic what you expect. Once
Yes.
the capacity is there, then they will.
Yeah, without the back-end infrastructure, nothing will happen because it doesn't really make sense. You don't know which material you would like to promote.
Right.
Right,
Sure.
because right now Singapore is, again, remember, all waste in Singapore, especially on plastic, it goes to incinerator.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric?
Yeah. Thanks, Corrado. I'm back to the agri sector and the smaller greenhouses, etc. Do you foresee that the government will put in some enforcements towards the agri-food sector in forms of the legislation will force them, the agri-food sector, to deploy technologies that can enable, for instance, these smaller greenhouses. Our technology, we are basically making a nitrogen enriched fertilizer, an organic fertilizer that has the potential to replace the mineral fertilizer that today is a major polluter. So we have, and in combination with several of the other companies in this program, we have technology available that can help out in these programs. However, it may also be costly to bring it out. And that is really requiring legislation and some sort of subsidies. Do you see this coming?
Yeah, Eric, have you looked at the Agri Transformation Fund in Singapore?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, Sami, I think we should send Eric the details, because when I'm listening to you, I think you will be. It could be interesting to consider setting up almost like a lab in Singapore. What Singapore is going to push for, and there will be grants and subsidies available from this fund. And again, there is a fund of 60 million Sing dollars today. They will test out technology in Singapore that they will scale up in markets like Indonesia, Vietnam.
All right, very interesting.
So if I think you should have a look at the it's called Agri Transformation Fund.
Yeah,
it was announced with the Green Plan.
Okay, I'm sure Per Christer can support me in this.
Yeah, yes. They also have the 30 by 30 express grant that the SFA, Singapore Food Authority, set up last year as well, which is 60 or 40 million. Yeah.
Ole?
Is it an organ or an association where foreigners like me can get facts and figures regarding the waste in the Singapore region? Something like a statistics and that.
NEA has a lot of statistics being published.
NEA.
And Ole, I can probably supply you some statistic as well, because again, we have this study. Is there anything particular that you're interested in? Plastic?
No, yes, it is. But I mentioned before that actually it's two things, that along the entire value chain, it's or it will be obviously a number of different players that need to participate. And I think that coordination, if one should come up with a good solution or meet the requirements that you have already mentioned, one need to work together. That is one thing. So it could be interesting. I mentioned this to the Nordic House earlier on, that I would be very, very interested to participate or even take the initiative to put a group together that can come up with a proposed solution, or at least discuss that. But that will of course require some willingness to invest. At the other hand, my question was related more that to try to calculate the business more in a financial way of thinking requires that you have access to statistics like volume, source, where the source is, whether it's a private household, is it the hospitality sector, is it the industry, food industry, etc., etc. That kind of information could be very, very interesting to me.
Yeah, Ole, I will share to Sami. There is a report that has been newly published by the AU Trade Commission in Singapore, together with the German Chamber of Commerce on plastic waste. I can share that with Sami, and then Sami you can distribute.
That would be great.
Can I ask an additional question?
Guys, do you have time? Because I have time, but I don't know your time.
We do have time. Our next session will start 4:30, so maybe like we can push half an hour max.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. My question is regarding the recycling of plastics, and I think you mentioned chemical treatment to recycle plastics. This is a discussion that goes on in Scandinavia and in Europe in general. I think maybe worldwide also, but it is to use pyrolysis to treat waste in general. What I hear and experience is that this kind of technology struggle a lot with the feedstock, if you can call it that, because it's not a homogeneous one, and the incineration or the pyrolysis technology seems to require very, very pure feedstock to operate in a good manner. Have you any ideas or any thoughts about that, or have you heard about these problems when you have investigated this area?
Yeah, so the challenge in Singapore and Southeast Asia with waste in general is the fact that it's very much contaminated, usually by food waste. And food waste being wet, your solid packaging, paper, plastic, glassless, is actually so much contaminated that is not recyclable.
I can very well understand that. We have some solution for it, but that is
I know. So that's why all I think what is happening right now, because waste is kind of Singapore with the zero waste master plan is looking at it from two angles. They're looking at it from reducing waste in the system, but they're also looking at the waste that will be in the system, how to recycling it. So whilst they want to reduce the waste, they are looking for technology that will be helping them sorting the waste more efficiently than what is happening today. Despite Singapore having one of the best sorting facilities, the fact that the waste is so contaminated, even the sorting facility is not really giving high rates of recyclability. Right. So what they're looking for is technology, and they're looking for certifications. So they're looking into whether independent parties can intervene and certify processes that will ensure that the feedstock quality is of a higher level than what it is today. So if you have technology that fits into this narrative, Ole, then definitely you should. I think you should. You should get to Singapore.
Yeah, sure. I will. I have, but I mean, this is just some personal view. I think that in every country, you need to work from both ends.
Yes.
You need to work from your household and your attitude. But this is obviously a technical matter in the end.
Yeah, and then I can also share with you, since we had that discussion with some of the European companies. In Europe, you also have compost. So when you're looking at the material, you're looking you're looking at their compostability, and then using waste as a compost to be reused, right? Singapore has very little possibility of composting.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at technology, you really need to look at technology that can ensure that you preserve the quality of the material, and thereby can immediately be used in as a feedstock for the back-end infrastructure that you are going to build, whether it is on plastic, paper, or glass. Again, I think it will be plastic, because paper and glass in Singapore is not a big amount of waste.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you.
Shall we take Ivar next?
Yeah.
We have some questions lining up, so just want to make sure that everybody will have airtime.
Thank you for a very nice presentation. And in your presentation, you came out with a statement that they're going very, very tough against hydrogen. And our solution is based on biogas treatment and catching the CO2 and using the material to produce food. Is there a room for the biogas plants discussion in this, or are hydrogen as a technology going all the way? So they drop the biogas production discussions. Do you think that would be a concern we should have?
No, I don't think so, Ivar. I think hydrogen is because they are looking at scalability. But if you're asking me as a transition fuel, and even probably more than just transition, biogas and biofuels fits very well into the zero waste master plan. As a feedstock for reusing waste. So I'm not particularly involved in that discussion though, but I'm happy to do some research internally. Eva, I still think that there is a space. The question with the biogas is how scalable is it?
Today we do about 70,000 tons, and I'm building a new plant taking 200,000 tons, and scale up bigger. It's just mathematics.
Yeah. And feedstock wise,
feedstock to the food.
Yeah.
We like for 150,000 we need 10 hectares to take the CO2 approximately.
Yeah.
So it's scalable, but it takes some area though. Yeah.
Yeah, because when I'm thinking, I don't know if you have been doing some research on the neighboring countries, because they are much more this type of technology is much more interesting to them, I feel.
I agree, but I also use this platform both on downscaling and upscaling. Yeah, to this possibility to discuss with you.
Eva, I probably can put you in contact with someone in Indonesia that could be relevant for you to have a chat with.
I would really much appreciate. Thank you.
Okay. Noted. Who's next?
I think Heli was next.
Yes, thank you. So thank you for the presentation. It was very valuable, and And okay, so we are actively searching for distributors in Singapore and Southeast Asia for our real-time measurement and automation solution, which are specially used in the wastewater processes. And you mentioned that it is important to be in connection with the association as well, not doing the business only via the distributors. And what is your recommendation if we have these real-time measurement automations and for the wastewater sector especially? So what are the most important association where we should take a contact?
So I will probably start with someone like the business council, the building council. So it's called the Singapore Green Building Council, SGBC. Because there is, so as you Heli, as you heard from the plan, there is a big, this 80-80-80 by 2030. I think water is a big, when you're looking at where water is being utilized, then of course you start thinking about buildings and establishments. PUB, I'm sure you had interaction with PUB, but if you haven't, then of course you should also make sure that you have contact to PUB. In order to present the solution. But again, I think the Council for Green Building will be an interesting one for you to look at, because they are basically increasingly, together with the BCA, the business, the Building Construction Agency or Authority, sorry, they are increasingly looking at the client side. So if you are a building developer or a building owner today, you will be increasingly looking for technology that can help you achieving those targets.
Okay.
Heli, we've been actually working with the BCA with our previous smart city program, so we do have a connection there, so we can follow up with that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Very well. Thank you.
Then we have one more. I can't see the name though. It's Artasvin.
Hello, this is Evren.
Hi, Evren.
Hello. Thank you for the nice presentation. We are involved in integrated solutions, both in water, wastewater treatment, together with the waste digestion and biogas. Currently, we are evaluating also integration of our biogas solutions with vertical farming. That's why it was quite interesting to hear from you too, how much developed Singapore about that issue. Our products are more for decentralized and standalone solutions. We can treat the water, then wastewater, and together with the biogas system, we can take the wastewater sludge and kitchen waste. All together, we can manage to make it as a fertilizer. And then, as I highlighted earlier, we are evaluating the vertical farming. Do you see any room for that kind of standalone, decentralized solutions for sustainable environmental technologies in that sense? For instance, you mentioned Singapore Green Building Council.
Yeah.
Is that a right party to get in contact with it? Or do you have any other recommendation for us?
Yeah, for you, I will go straight to HDB, House Development Board. That's where the households, because some of the social housing in Singapore, they are different quality. And remember, there is a plan there to save energy, 15% by 2030. But again, if you are able to, and I think your proposition is compelling, right? Because is wastewater.
Yes. Fully integrated and holistic system approach we have.
Yeah. So I would, I mean, without really knowing much of your business, but just face value, I think HDB will definitely be an interested party, because they are looking into how to scale up and how to make sure that they are able to meet the targets.
Oh, okay, thank you. By the way, before finishing, do you have any names, or just maybe Sami and Riku may put us in contact with?
Yeah, we do have some connections with the HDB as well, so we can take an action point with that with Riku.
Okay, that will be great. Thank you.
Yeah. And I suggest as well, Eva, if you haven't studying it, then look at this TUAS Nexus project, because you might even NEA could be an interesting party for you to meet.
NDA?
NEA, so National Energy Agency.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and look in particular for the TUAS Nexus project.
We met the. So did you mean NEA as a National Environment Agency, or the energy?
National Energy Agency, NEA.
Yeah, so it's Environment Agency.
Yeah, environment.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Environment.
Yeah, we met them earlier this week. So.
And TUAS?
Yeah, I'm putting it on the. It's actually on my slide as well, but it's TUAS Nexus. Is on the chat. Oh, sorry, that was directly to. Sorry, Jacqueline, I sent it to you. Wait, I'm sending it to everyone. Yeah, thanks.
I sent a link.
Yeah, I saw it. Sorry, thank you.
So I'm actually collating some of the topics they are talking about. So I will share the document with everyone as well. The links.
Good. All right. Do we have any more questions from our side? Rare opportunity.
No. you know where you can find me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But if there are no questions at this point, I guess that then we can start wrapping up our session, and quite a lot of action points, which is great. So we will do some follow-ups with those. And Corrado, if it's okay, I believe that your contact details were on the deck, so we will share that with the company. So if there are any more specific questions for you, if companies can then email you directly and continue conversation in that way. But now, super. Thank you so much, Corrado. This was really, really useful and really helpful. And thank you so much for spending a couple of hours on Friday afternoon with us. It's a very precious time, so highly appreciate it. Riku has also some final words.
Yes, so not final words, but one more question for Corrado. So Corrado, you are head of sustainability at KPMG. How could KPMG help companies like the ones you have been speaking to today from the Nordics? So what could you do to help companies?
Yeah, good question, Riku. I think that what we start seeing in the sustainability space. So under, if we go back to the 6 momentum, right? So if we start with the green economy, that one you remember is a lot pertaining to decarbonization, is pertaining to investment. So what is usually happening from a KPMG perspective is actually how can we help companies raising money. It could be one aspect. So we are increasingly working with the so-called green finance framework, And Singapore has launched as the first one in the world, actually, from an authority regulator perspective, there is a sustainability linked loan a subsidy grant that you can get access to that will actually pay for a consultant to help you developing frameworks pertaining to a specific project. So that's one. Then under the green consumerism and green procurement, so green government and livable, sustainable living, I think there we start seeing increasingly interest from companies to understand how aligned are they with potential green public procurement requirement. It could also be pertaining to certifications requirement. So we probably start seeing a bit of that work coming up. But most of the work that I see and feel that could be relevant to you is probably more on the strategy side, meaning how do you actually scale and use Singapore as your launch pad for Southeast Asia. That's where we believe that the narrative that you're building around your business proposition and how aligned is that with the international language of sustainability. That's definitely one area that KPMG is of assistance. And then you have service lines within tax. So I'm on the advisory side, but you also have tax advisory. I think that could be very interesting for some of you facing either being establishing in Singapore or looking at having some hybrid setup. And finally, I think there is on the audit side where we're increasingly seeing new companies as well looking for the more regulatory type of work that needs to be carried out. So I think sustainability in particular is probably more the strategy part that I can see could be relevant. Riku.
Okay, thank you. Sounds good.
Okay. Excellent. So with that, let's wrap up today's session. Thank you so much again, Corrado. And for others, we will see you guys soon in the other sessions. For Corrado, thanks again. Happy Friday. Have a good weekend. And maybe then we touch base later on today or latest on Monday.
Yeah, and Sami, if I can have 2 minutes
Sure,
of
yeah.
your time after this one, but let me also thank you all for your attention, questions, interest, curiosity. I hope this was useful, a little bit more pragmatic, and again, feel free to reach out. Happy to share what I know. I have a few reports and things that I will share, and then pertaining to EVAR in Indonesia, I probably will ask for your address. Then I can follow up personally directly to you.
Thank you for your help.
Yeah. So guys, thank you so much. Happy Friday, and stay well, stay curious, and look at Singapore because I think there are super exciting things happening here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you,
Thank you
Corrado.
very
Very
much.
much.
Very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.